Hello, everyone, to another wonderful episode of the Stories About Fear podcast with a very special lady that is also Italian. We were just talking a bit before starting this recording that her name is pronounced Cimenti. And it got me thinking about summer holidays. I love Italy so much. Claudia was also mentioning that she is really looking forward to a holiday. We are both in summer modes. And what we are going to share with you today in full summer, Claudia is in Luxembourg. I am in Romania, thinking about summer, but also about business because my fearless friends, today's episode is about innovate your leadership and care about your team. Because my wonderful guest for today is an accredited leadership and team coach dedicated to helping corporate and entrepreneurial leaders, as well as their teams in tech and beyond. She enables them to not only navigate the complexities, but actually thrive in today's ever faster moving business world. And it does move faster than a blink of an eye at times. More about my wonderful guest. She is also an author, team coaching. What is it and is it right for me and my team? A comprehensive guide for leaders and stakeholders that care about their teams. Now, my fearless friends, I like to take a bit of time before the actual episodes to prepare everything, of course. And when I saw the word care and business and leadership, that got me even more excited. A bit about my encounter with my lovely guest, Claudia Cimenti. I've also seen her recently on a common friends events, and we exchanged some really interesting thoughts. And this excites me even more because every time that we get together as a community, we thrive. We are doing great things individually, but when we get together, some magical things happen. Welcome, Claudia. It's such a pleasure to have you here with us today.
Roxana, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much for having me.
A great pleasure. And, you know, very curious. And I'm sure that everyone watching us and listening to us are. What's your story, Claudia? And how did you get into this beautiful leadership realm?
Yeah, well, the story took some twists and turns, as it does very often nowadays, that we do not just start on one lane and stay on that lane through our entire personal and professional life, but, kind of shift around a little bit. And that was my story as well. But before we go there, I want to just say that I'm actually Luxembourgish. My dad came from Italy, but my mom was Luxembourgish. I grew up in Luxembourg and finished high school here. After that, there wasn't any university here in Luxembourg, and that dates me a little bit, I know, because they just celebrated their 20th anniversary. So I went to France to study engineering and mathematics. After 2 years in France, I went to the US. Why, you might ask? Because in France, I met my now husband, who was an exchange student from the US. So we were college sweethearts. We have been together for over 30 years. And, it drew me to the US, where I was actually for 20 years. After college, I started working as a computer engineer and worked for companies like Digital Equipment and Intel as an engineer. However, I am not well suited for a cubicle engineering environment, so it drew me out of the proverbial doors and out of the proverbial box rather quickly. And what does an engineer do? you go into consulting engineering, of course. I was hired by a company who was selling software that was used by engineers. And after I did a really successful stint as an engineer for that company, I was asked to become an executive account manager. And I did that, and I didn't regret it at all. Um, so what that entailed was a long sales cycle, very complex, like sales cycle of up to a year was proof of concept. I was working with my engineering team to do a proof of concept for the client, revamping verification methodology, and so on. So my clients were companies like Cisco, Alcatel, Intel, Lucent, and so on. So big contract, multi-million dollar contracts on occasion. So what drew me to that truly was that, first of all, you were kind of this mediator between your own company's requirements and expectations and desires and those of the client, and to really go there and try to figure out what works best for both sides was really something that made me very excited. Also, you worked on all layers of the organization. So the engineering teams on the ground floor, their managers, all the directors up the chain, up to the C-suite, and sometimes the CEO, who was the one signing on the dotted line. So it gave me a true appreciation for the complexities of a large organization, and the languages they used, the desires that they had, the way of viewing the world that these people had at the various layers of the organization. I absolutely loved my job, and I was very successful at it. Unfortunately, in the early 2000s, I started having some health issues, and I had to stop doing that job. And so that took me quite a while to get back on my feet. It's all good now. But you know, there was this time for me to build my own personal resilience and so on. So in the mid to 2010s, I got some additional diagnoses and some medication that ultimately made me revive. It was really like, you know, when you have these dry sponges that you put into water and they just suck into water and revive and get back to their spongy glory. Well, that's a little bit how I felt. And immediately I started to invest myself into a proper coaching education. I think that I have been a coach, or at least have a coaching mentality, long before I even knew what the word meant, meaning that it is the way that I approached my work, back in the day, the way that I approach, you know, dealing with my environment in general. And so it was a very logical step. Indeed, all the people that knew me from my professional life, when they heard that I had become a leadership coach, team coach, they're like, oh yeah, that fits. So no big surprises there. And so that's how it went. And I went on to study really hard for a number of years. And now I'm established in private practice here in Luxembourg.
Wow, that's quite a story. And I love it how you just took a rather difficult time. You took time to heal because you were not given too many options. And then you basically turn it around to something that's you, 100% you. Love it. You have quite some skills, Claudia. And when it comes to leadership, can you please share with us, what do you think would be the number one thing that a team and their leader should focus on so that things are harmonious? What do you think?
Well, I think that the answer to that actually speaks to my general approach. I can't give you a number one. Because I think if I go into a meeting, an exploration meeting with my list, my graded, ranked list of things that should or should not happen and so on, I am kind of biased already. And I think my greatest strength is to go in there and truly listen and truly discover. And then, based on the context and the people and the leader and the organization and their capabilities, frankly, then to grasp what I need for my toolbox, if you wish, in order to address it. Because otherwise, there's, in my philosophy, there's not really any room for one size fits all. Everything is truly custom, and I go in there trying my really level best to not have any expectations of my own.
Wow, I love that. And it just makes so much sense because you need to basically tailor everything so that the very unique needs of your client are 100% met. And you are right. And in order to listen, I have a feeling that your ego is pretty tame, right?
If I wear my coaching hat, yes. If I wear my coaching hat. And I really do think that we do need to take ourselves out of the equation, what we really want to see, how we really expect clients to behave and not. Of course, we want them to learn and become accountable to what they say and so on, but it's their journey and their work. And ultimately, I can also not take responsibility for them doing something or not doing something. And it's the proverbial: you can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make it drink. They need to figure out ways of getting there, and I'm there to support that, to act as a catalyst, to help them explore different perspectives and so on, of course. But in the end, it's their responsibility.
100%. And this must be one of my favorite quotes because, as I was telling you earlier, as I'm also being a co-author in a mental health wonderful book with the Imperfectly Perfect campaign, I am, of course, sharing it to many people that I know would really need it. But then again, I should just keep my expectations in a way to myself and not expect them to get too involved if they maybe don't feel like it, because what we don't know, and of course it's something really good that you do with listening so intensely, we don't know what we don't know. We don't know what's happening behind the scenes. And I actually got curious when you said that you have a whole list of things that you need to go through to ask your clients to see what's really happening there. What is the culture of the company? From all of the talks that you had so far, is there maybe a red flag that you've noticed in several clients so far regarding leadership and how they operate as a team?
Well, it's kind of interesting because this is a stories about fear podcast, and I think this underlying low-level trembly kind of fear of the things left unsaid or the overwhelm of too much is really, I think, at the core of a lot of it. From a neuroscientific standpoint, a lot of people, I think, unfortunately, in today's work environment, they are in a threat response oftentimes. Will I be able to deliver? What will others think? How is management going to support me or not? And, what does this say about me? They're bombarded by so much that stress levels are high. You might not see it, people might not say it, but stress levels are high. And you just need to be in a room with a team and you are going to sense it. You're going to sense it even on a Zoom call, because even my team coaching very often is online, because with today's global distributed teams, you don't have another choice. And, it allows me to be here in Luxembourg and coach teams that are all over the world. But I really do think that that is something to be addressed. And it goes into psychological safety, it goes into, all these kind of things. But I really think that underlying kind of energy, this nervous energy, is at the root of a lot of it, because people feel psychologically, again, to use neuroscientific, wording, threatened. And so, they put up their shields and they put up their protective coping mechanisms. And sometimes that can make situations even worse. Yeah.
I've noticed that, Claudia, and I'm so grateful that you shared that. We are, in a way, just used to feeling stressed. It's like a part of today's society and professional life and business. And I wanted to ask you, how do you deal with fear and stress? Would you advise our listeners to do maybe something in particular to keep these under control?
Well, I think the first thing might be to just realize that it is normal and nothing is wrong with you. It's a normal state of being, this discomfort that you feel when you try something new. And, it's just part of the game. It's kind of I always say it's the price of growth. Because unless you push yourself, unless you put yourself out there, unless you push the boundaries of your comfort zone, you're not going to grow. And that, is not a comfortable place to be. It's a threatening place to be. You're trying things you haven't tried before. So I think normalizing that sensation as just part of the process and not, oh, there must be something wrong with me, I believe is really something very, very important and a great first step. I think that regular, rest and relaxation plays into it, meaning trying to also allow yourself time outs and time for yourself. And that also is part of being a professional and a leader and a team member in today's society, that you have to take responsibility for your own mental and psychological well-being. And that takes different forms for different people. Some might vegetate in front of Netflix, and others might go out for a run, and that, or do extreme sports or whatever it may be. And that's fine. Just find what works for you in order to kind of balance this thing and come back to normal. I am a big proponent, actually, of a practice of gratitude. I really believe that that helps, because I think that a lot of these fear-based responses and so on is because our brain very naturally focuses on the negative. There's this bias of negativity. It is part of our biological brain that we notice the negative things very, very much more than the positive things. So in other words, it requires effort to find the proverbial silver linings in the clouds, to look for the positives. They're there, but it takes effort versus the negative stuff you do get for free. So I think that if you get into a practice of gratitude and self-reflection, for that matter, you build this kind of a muscle. And later on, it becomes more of a second nature, that when you are thrown into a situation that might a priori be negative, and on the surface it might very well might be negative, overwhelming, stressful, there's this part of you that you have trained that says, well, maybe it's not happening to me, but it's happening for me, and let's see what happens, and let's see, what positive might come out of it. And you keep kind of these options open. And I believe that that is a really interesting practice to have, actually, so much so that I am writing a book about it at this moment as well.
Wow, Claudia, you said some amazing things that got me so excited. I have a million questions for you. Why do we make these episodes so short, right? I never have time to ask all of these amazing questions that I have for you because number one, you've stated my mission, as a fear specialist. And what I want to do here with this platform with stories about fear is to inspire people, to teach them to embrace their emotions and their fears. As you said, so brilliantly said, it's nothing wrong with you. It's normal. It's being a human. It's what being alive is basically all about. So I love that so much. Also, it's important to see fear as a messenger. And as you said, it gets you out of the comfort zone. It could be painful, but with the help of gratitude. And I'm so thankful you mentioned this because even I sometimes skip it. I say that life happens. I have a small child, many things going on, but it becomes our second nature when we keep consistent. You cannot be both fearful and grateful at the same time. You
Exactly.
mentioned about your book. You have one that was launched. You have two more in the coming, which is very impressive. But I wanted to ask you something about leadership, Claudia. Let's say that we have someone that is at the beginning of their entrepreneurial journey. There may be a young manager that all of a sudden has their team of 10 people. Would you advise them to focus on a particular thing so that things don't go out of control? What do you think for someone that's really young at the beginning of their journey?
Well, I think that especially for young leaders, often they do not get that leadership is like a whole new profession. And it's not something that you magically just get out of bed one morning and it just works. And especially in tech, I have seen it so many times. You have this genius widget maker, right? I mean, they're like so good at coding or, solving certain problems that they rise kind of in their skill set and expertise above the others. And what does the company do? They promote them to team lead and manager of other widget makers. Well, this is just a widget maker. This is not by default already a leader. And I think that if the number one message, I think, would be to realize that there needs to be some attention brought to learning and exploring leadership. So many do not even go out and really learn and so on. And company often thinks, oh, let's send him to like a leadership seminar. And then, next Monday morning, he's going to be this perfectly formed leader. And I think that oops, sorry, a big fly here. Sorry about that. And so I think that to realization that with this new position comes a new set of learning objectives and I think that then it is helpful to work with a coach because a young leader does not know what they don't know and is often at a loss in terms of how to deal with now this layer of interpersonal conflict and that can happen in a team. And, sometimes it even starts with resentment of their peers of why did he get promoted and I did not. So there's a lot of stuff happening there. It really also depends because I think even in terms of leadership skills, depending on the personal makeup of the leader, there are certain things that he or she will naturally already do, and others are in their blind spot. So again, there is not like this, list of things that naturally first you have to work on this because it might already be happening. So there as well, I think it's important to learn based on the challenging context that they're in at the moment, right? And use that kind of as a let's discuss this and see what you can learn about yourself, the way you show up as a leader, the way you interact with your team, and so on, your, your philosophy of leadership through the resolution of this one thing. Another thing I think that's very important is that there is not one perfect leadership style. I really do believe that that's not the case. We all know that there's different styles of leadership, the laissez-faire leadership to authoritarian leadership, the all these different types of leadership. And it's not that some are good and some are bad, but some are good or bad, or let's not say good or bad, but more or less appropriate given a particular scenario. So a good leader is the one who can pick the leadership style out of the hat that is the most appropriate for a specific team, for a specific decision that needs to be made, and so on. So very well, one day you might need to be the authoritarian, and the next time you might need to be the one to just let the team figure it out. And so that kind of flexibility and developing some strong nerves as you become more experienced, I think is what learning leadership is all about.
That's wonderful. And I love it with how much ease you talk about leadership because, I've read many books, even from John Maxwell, and I kind of had this idea in my mind that, you need to be just to the T, really organized with things, and you need to at one point, but leave room for improvement and for patience when it comes to what you already know. You don't need to be jumping into learning new skills unless you truly feel like it, because I have a feeling, Claudia, that you want to have your clients aligned with who they really are and just increasing their number one skills that they already have inside them by default, right? It's not taking them to something completely new unless you fully get them to emerge into what they already have inside of them, right?
Yeah, I believe that I am a priori a strength-based coach. I believe that, first do build your strong points and don't only focus on your weaknesses. Sometimes there are, however, areas of improvement that you do need to pay attention to, because otherwise you cannot get your strengths to shine. But there again, it really does depend, because if you're, for instance, a brilliant strategist, but you can't communicate, you're doing yourself a disservice, and you should focus on your communication as well, and not just improve your strategy skills. So I think that there's room for both, and attention needs to be paid for both. But it's I think being a strengths-based coach also means giving the client the assurance that it's not all doom and gloom. Right? I mean, there is progress being made. Maybe it's not as fast as your upper leadership wants, or maybe sometimes the water is muddy. But on the other hand, we can all just do what we can do.
I so enjoy that, Claudia. I really am seeing such a different side of leadership and teamwork and communication. And I have this vibe and energy from you of patience and flexibility, which is chill. I think you're the first person that I've talked to around leadership and teamwork. And you have this wonderful aura of let's take our time. It doesn't happen overnight. And as you said, and it really sounds funny if we get to think about it. You are sending a young manager to a leadership course and you cannot expect that on Monday he'll be, yes, let's get all the mountains up and running. Let's get everything up and running, because it's not realistic. I remember.
Because
Go on.
what does it help if you send him through a weekend seminar and he or she gets bombarded with the top 30 things you now have to do as a leader? It's information overload. Very often they're not able to prioritize what really needs to come first, or is this a problem, is this really not a problem? And so I think that it's very often even more disconcerting and overwhelming for the young leader to, feel all of that. Because yes, you might query, very experienced leaders, and you might query 100 of them, and there might be a list emerging of things that they all do really well, but those guys didn't all start at the same point and develop these skills at the same time in the same way. So I think that's why I call myself an emergent and eclectic coach. Emergent because we have to figure out what emerges as the problem and what emerges as the potential solution. And then you have to be eclectic about your approach of how you do it. I think it's dangerous, not dangerous, but it's a suboptimal approach to have a framework and to follow that one framework, throughout, irrespective of how it fits. And so I think to be able to truly adapt is very important. And I tell you, it's not always easy. I go into, very complex team engagements where I am, let's say, with an executive team, and everybody has their own agenda. There's long-term issues that have existed within this thing, a lot of legacy issues and so on. And sometimes you feel like you're this itty bitty tugboat pushing against the ocean liner, trying to get it to move over a little bit, so that they even open their perspectives a little bit in terms of what's possible, truly. And I think that something I give a lot of thought to is the concepts, and the first one I named, so the name might change, but it's problem blindness. To really figure out what the problem is behind the problem, and not just stick a band-aid on some superficial kind of issue, but let's really get to the core of what's going on. And the other concept is the one of solutionlessness, meaning it's okay if you don't instantly know the solution to a complex situation, right? That there's time that you need to take to clarify what really is going on. And, then the solution often just emerges, truly. It becomes so self-evident once you have really taken a long and hard, deep look at the situation, at the systemic environment, and so forth. Sorry, I interrupted you before, but...
No worries, Claudia. I so enjoy this. You said something that, I wish I knew. When I was a manager, I was a team leader, then I was a manager many years ago in an American multinational company, since you were also talking about the US. And it was awful. Talk about being young, having no idea about communication. And I want to share something that's pretty funny. I want to know your intake on this. So I usually would only communicate with my team, this is how I was told, via email, because it's easier to copy everyone, send them an email, everything should be up and running. And at one point I felt creative. And I said, well, we have this situation. We have a call center issue, and I asked one of my freelancers, well, what do you think about this particular case? What would you do? Because I usually would be the only one that would give them the solution. And I kind of, got pretty tired of doing all the work myself. And I felt, you know what? I just don't want them to copy paste my answers anymore. Let them figure it out on their own, because we were working for, I think, about 2 years. But no dynamics, no teamwork, no communication, no nothing. And what ended up from my colleague, from the freelancer, was, how dare you tell me that? You're supposed to give me the answer. I'm not paid to do this. And it struck me. And I see it funny now, but I used to be so puzzled at the time, thinking, oh my God, these people kind of like everything done in a more robotic way. But it was, looking back, it was my fault. If we were to take responsibility, the true responsibility, right? Because I did not communicate with them, and maybe giving them a background and preparing them for my creative side. And how important is, Claudia, communication, if you were to consider this pretty cute story?
Yeah, I think that more than communication, I think maybe at the core of it is expectation management. I think that, also every leader has a different philosophy, a different way of doing things. And, the expectation of your predecessor might very well have been, you just do exactly what I tell you when I tell you, and, don't generate any kind of input. And if that's what they're used to and that's what they were expecting, and, what do for them, it's a shock to the system if now all of a sudden they have to like, what? They're asking me for my opinion or to be creative here. So I think that expectation and giving this permission is really important. And it's not just this rather dry exercise sometimes done by HR with like role role differentiation and things like that. It's of course part of it, but it's not enough. And I think that it helps sometimes when you when leaders think about them and their team as a bubble. It's an analogy I use a lot. There is societal culture, there's organizational culture, there's expectations from outside, of course, from upper leadership, from your stakeholders, and so on. But you in this team, you are in this bubble. And you have to figure out within this bubble, when when the meeting room is closed, or when you're in the Zoom, you're allowed to live by whatever it takes to make good work. Good work, good productivity, good fun. Oh my God, that's like a taboo word nowadays, right? But good fun, and figure out what rules you have to do in this bubble. What do you expect? How can you contribute? And so on. So and then, of course, we do not want that to go completely against company culture and so on, but there's some leeway there about how work happens in this bubble, how your psychological safety agreement looks like, how you communicate, how you work about it. And so I think that navigating that sometimes then helps a leader, because they say, okay, let's figure out first what we need and how we need to work together, and then see whether or not that fits into the larger framework of the organization or society's culture. And rather than having this outside in approach, having maybe more of an inside out approach.
Wow. This is wonderful knowledge, Claudia. Thank you so much for sharing this. What a great analogy with the bubble. And now I see what you mean. Now I understand, looking back several years in advance after I've, quit that position, I completely understand. And now I would know how to do things in a completely different way. And I can imagine you have many of these amazing things in your book that it's not long ago that you launched. Can you please tell us all about this amazing project of yours?
Yeah, so as I was scouring the bookshelves and, Amazon and so on, I realized that a lot of team coaching books are written for coaches that want to become team coaches. They're how-to books. And, some of them also are for leadership, how a leader can kind of have more of a coaching approach as they lead. However, there wasn't a book out there that was really answering the question, which is the subtitle of the book: what is team coaching and is it right for me and my team? So I wrote this book, curating content, truly trying to bring across what is team coaching, what could benefits be, what does an engagement look like, in the hopes that leaders can then make an informed decision about whether or not to bring in a team coach or not. And so that was kind of the goal. I tried to fill this hole that I had not seen addressed before, really, for leaders and stakeholders that care for their teams, as you mentioned before. Would it make sense to bring in a team coach or not? So that's at the core of the quest of the book.
That's so interesting and very different. You are right, because if I were to think about it myself, I'm also a book lover. I love consuming content and I learn a lot. I've never heard of anything like this, so this is exciting. Can you please tell us about your two other upcoming books? What are they about, if you can share?
No. I mean, the first one actually was a project that I started but never finished way back when I started coaching. But I still think it has relevance today. It is actually about gratitude and how a gratitude practice can be helpful, because we shouldn't forget that whether we are a leader, junior, senior, upper executive leader, or a team member at any level of the organization, we're still people. We're still people, and we bring our whole selves to work. And so I don't think that, as I am more and more now a leadership coach, executive coach, team coach, that writing this book, and it has some journal part to it about gratitude, is kind of at a it doesn't fit. It does absolutely fit. So it's a project I had mostly completed, so now I'm gonna finish it. The other one is actually entitled The Reflective Leader, and it's along the same lines that leaders should try to get into this practice of self-reflection and really ponder these things, because I think it's unfortunate that we're stuck in this cycle of busyness and stress, really, and overwhelm. And it's exactly these moments of time out and self-reflection that will make us grow. So the book there too is going to introduce the concept and why it might be a good idea, and then followed with prompts of various aspects of leadership, jumbled, not in any kind of flow, again on purpose, to allow the leader to capture their thoughts. And no, I wouldn't be unhappy if people just leave it in the bathroom even. Take those couple minutes every now and then to just think about something. It's perfectly allowed. Perfectly allowed.
Wow, I love it. Yes, anytime we have a moment to read, I even say that a sentence can most of the times make all the difference, because, right, Claudia, 1% is so much better than 0%. Any way you take it, any way you look at it. So, yes, maybe people don't have 15 minutes, but 5 minutes, I think that we can maybe craft along the day, because it's vital. As I said earlier, before we even started recording, there's nothing that you can do unless you have this harmonious liaison with your team in a way. And unless you're going in the same direction, it takes time. But there's just so much that we don't know, like so many mistakes that I did when I was a team leader and a manager. And I'm just listening to you, and in the back of my mind, I'm just smiling so much, because I'm just, rearranging things in my mind as I'm hearing you talk. What a brilliant conversation, Claudia. And I cannot believe it's almost an hour since we began our talk. I don't know, these episodes kind of need to be longer. I need to find a balance with, because I have so many more things to ask you, but these are going to be for another time. However, please tell us where we can find you, Claudia. Where can we see your work? Because everyone listening and watching now will want to at least have a talk with you.
Yes, absolutely. And please, reach out. I am available. I would love to continue this conversation. And so I am not a big social media person, so just go to LinkedIn. And you will find me there, absolutely. My personal profile is Claudia Cimenti, written with Cimenti. I have a company website called topcoach.lu, LU standing for Luxembourg. And, it will be my absolute pleasure to continue these conversations. As I said, my book can be had by going to any Amazon and just typing in Claudia Cimenti team, and it will pop right up.
Wonderful, Claudia. This has really been enlightening for me, and I know that for everyone watching and listening to us as well. I've enjoyed this so much. I've really learned many new things that, I wish I knew back then, but at the same time, I'm thinking maybe I should have been a bit more patient with myself, because some of this information is just so deep that I would not have been able to process it back then, to be to be fully honest. So this has been a great honor, my dear. Thank you so much for being with us, and I can't wait to see what amazing things you are going to create next.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Roxana. This was a great pleasure. Oh, I forgot to mention, I do have a YouTube channel. You can find me on Top Coach Luxembourg on YouTube as well. But links to that can be found on my LinkedIn, so no trouble there. So thank you really, truly so much. This was fun, and you did a great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Claudia.